When Christ was asked about the end of the world, he said to study and understand the book of Daniel. That's in Matthew 24, verse 15. Daniel, as much as any other book at the time that he said that from the Old Testament, reveals the God of creation who knows the end from the beginning. And it shows four kingdoms represented by four metals in this image of a man that the king Nebuchadnezzar dreamt about. But Nebuchadnezzar could not remember his dream, and he was going to execute all his wise men because they claimed to know the gods. And Daniel and his friends were among them, but Daniel said, we serve the God of heaven, who knows what that dream was, and he can give us the meaning. And so Daniel was asked for an extra little time. They prayed about it, no doubtedly. But that night, Daniel had the dream, and God showed him the meaning of this dream, in which Nebuchadnezzar was the head of gold. It represented the Babylonian kingdom, but it would be superseded by another kingdom, maybe less wealthy or rich, represented by silver, which is a stronger metal. And then a bronze or brass thighs representing a third kingdom, and finally an iron kingdom. And after that, there was feet of iron and clay mixed, partly strong, partly weak, until a stone is cut out of a mountain, and this is not shown here, but the stone smashes the feet of the image and it topples over. The image becomes chaff, ground to dust, and blown away by the wind. And Daniel gives him the interpretation that in the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom, and it will never be destroyed, but it will grind in pieces these other kingdoms. So now we're going to look at what these represented. The head of gold, as we said, was Babylon. The arms and chest of silver represented the Medo-Persian Empire, which superseded it. And then Grecia conquered the Medes and Persians in the Battle of Arbela around 331, until finally around 168 the Roman Empire came into its own and was represented by the Iron Kingdom. After the Roman Empire, the kingdoms of this world have been partly strong, partly weak, but no ruling empire has superseded all the others. So that's it in a nutshell. The vision of Daniel 2 is repeated to Daniel in a dream, representing the earthly kingdoms as kingdoms of fierce beasts of prey. And we see this basically. Rulers and kings are selfish, greedy. They cause war, which causes the loss of many lives in an effort to extend their kingdoms and be great, when really it's a sad situation. The kingdoms of Daniel 7 represent historic ones of Daniel 2 as well. In other words, the head of gold, which was Babylon, is represented by the lion, and ancient Babylon had lions in their architecture. The bear represents the kingdom of Medo-Persia, but in our time, well, we'll get to that in a minute or so, but it was the Medes and Persians. Then came Grecia, the leopard-like beast with four heads, representing the four generals that took over after Alexander the Great died. This is the same kingdom as the thighs of brass in Daniel 2. And then in Daniel 2 there was the legs of iron, represented here in Daniel 7 with this dragon-like beast with 10 horns, which were the 10 kingdoms or tribes that roamed Europe as the Roman Empire fell apart. They had the Ostrogoths, which were like Austria, the Vandals, the Franks, which was France, Anglo-Saxons, England, the Burgundians, etc. These nations were secondary to a little horn that became very great, representing the papacy. At least Protestant reformers felt that it was the papacy. Based on the description in Daniel 7:25, this little horn spoke great words against the Most High. They felt this was the boast that the title, one of the official titles of the Pope, was Lord God the Pope, and that was blasphemous to them. He persecuted. It says he wore out the saints of the Most High. Conservative historians say that the papacy martyred about 50 to 100 million Christians during the Dark Ages, when kings were ruled by the Pope in the Holy Roman Empire. When Rome had the power to do so, it was fierce. And that's why Protestants fled the old world to come to the new world, and we are thankful for the freedoms that they gave us in a constitution that allowed religious freedom, freedom of press, freedom of speech, etc. So here we are in Daniel 7, and in verse 9 and 10, there's a judgment. And the context is the great words of the little horn in verses 8 and 11. Well, sure enough, just a couple years ago, the Pope came to this country, spoke to the U.S. Congress and the UN the following day. Great words. And so the context is judgment. Judgment is impending on America. We should recognize that God judged Egypt for killing babies, and we have aborted 60 million. Egypt enslaved Israelites, but the U.S. has enslaved most people in alcohol, tobacco, drugs, prescription drugs being a leading cause of death, what we call it health care. We can thank Congress for that. The bondage includes food, fashions, fiction, gambling, greed, sex, perversion, violence, TV, you name it, we've got it. And bottom line is the judgment is impending, and we should be ready for what's coming. So along this line, you'll be in better position if you understand the issues from an ebook that you can get this coming Saturday on Amazon. It's, if you type in my name, Richard Ruhling, R-U-H-L-I-N-G, and the title of the book, Alpha and Omega Bible Code. The Omega is spelled O-M-E-G-A, Greek letter, and it includes good information on the book of Daniel and Revelation, the prophecies, and also the wedding parables, which are an end-time phenomenon. So please give it a look, and thank you very much for your consideration. We hope to see you at the top, and that's not long from now. Thank you so much. God bless you.